Welcome everybody. This is a YouTube channel, the Jack O Spades. Subscribe to the channel if you like the video and the content. My name is Colonel Jack Spade. So definitely if you like the content, subscribe. I'd appreciate that very much. And share the video, retweet it. Share it on Facebook, Google, wherever. You know what I mean. There you have it. Anyways, this video is about New York becomes the 23rd state to have medical marijuana. New York becomes the 23rd medical marijuana state in America. On Saturday, July 5th, Governor Andrew Cuomo signed the Compassionate Care Act into law, making New York the 23rd state with an effective medical marijuana law. The law goes into effect immediately, although patients are not expected to have legal protections or safe access to medical marijuana until 2016. Well, I think that's bogus. I think with it being effective immediately, that means they should be covered and they should be safe. There's no reason they should not be, legally protected and be safe. I think it's bogus. If it's something that goes into effect immediately, that it should cover and protect those who need it because they are suffering and they are seriously ill, and whatnot. So, I got a plethora to say on it, a lot. I don't understand why, wouldn't, but we're going to get into that more later. So the law's passage is the product of many years of work by legislative champions led by Assemblyman Richard Gottfried and more recently Senator Diane Savino, patients and their loved ones, and the list goes on. I'm thankful for everybody who's been involved, and I appreciate it very much. I am not in New York, but if I did live in New York, I'd be extremely happy that this is a step forward. It is a partial step forward. It is not a full step forward. It's not 2 steps forward, in my opinion. From what I understand, it's like a step and a half or half a step forward into the right direction, but it is the right direction. It is some direction forward for this. Well, there are many reasons to rejoice. The law is unfortunately much more limited than what was introduced, largely due to amendments by Governor Cuomo that he insisted upon. Many seriously ill patients will be left behind, at least initially. So, seriously ill patients who could end up dying because they don't have the access to medical marijuana until 2016, when they're going to be legally protected fully. It's like, really? Are you serious, Governor Cuomo? If you're watching this, reevaluate it, dive into some more research that isn't just, about the negative effects, because a lot of that is bogus, as we all know, that there's a lot of positives with the cannabis plant, for hemp and for marijuana, that there are largely great, gigantic benefits for, humankind with it. And for the planet to, and so forth. But, only patients with one of 10 seriously conditions will qualify, although the health department is allowed to add qualifying conditions, which that is a good thing. I like hearing that they're allowed to add qualifying conditions. The law allows far too few dispensaries by providing for no more than 5 growers. Why only 5? I think that's quite a low number. With up to 4 dispensaries, 4 dispensary locations each, patients will not be able to smoke cannabis. A summary of the law is available, and I'm going to be going over and reading some of that here in a moment. So if you just bear with me for a moment. But they're not going to be able to smoke it, so they're going to have to use, I'm guessing they're going to have to use vaporizers to vape it. They'll have to eat it, or make it into an oil or some sort of thing, So, some people, it helps them better when they smoke for it. It's pretty amazing that this one plant, particularly when it's ingested, whether you smoke it or you eat it, and so forth, that it has numerous benefits with the human body. But that's a lot of science, and there's a lot of science behind it that proves the positive effects and why there are positive effects for using cannabis. But don't get it wrong. I'm not saying to for teenagers, kids to recreationally use cannabis and marijuana. I'm saying for a medical purpose, for people to use it if they need to, because a lot of the medicines that are made into pill forms and so forth by pharmaceutical companies do not give the actual proper relief. It can actually do harm more than it does good, but then it can do harm as well. Where medical marijuana doesn't have any side effects. It's not killed nobody in the history. The only way somebody's died from marijuana is maybe if they're transporting it and they got hundreds of pounds, thousands of pounds or whatever, hundreds of pounds in the back, and then they crash for some reason and then it crushes them. You know what I mean? Nobody died from smoking it ever or eating it. So, while this is a vital step forward, the work to ensure that all seriously ill patients who can benefit from medical cannabis have reasonable access to this is not done. So once again, while it is a vital step forward, the work to ensure that all seriously ill patients who can benefit from medical cannabis in New York have reasonable access to it is not done yet. Stay tuned for updates on how you can help improve New York's new medical marijuana programs and and stay tuned to more results and more updates as to what is going on with it. As I'll be covering multiple states, I'm going to try to cover all 50 states here in America, and then so I'll be I'll be covering stuff outside. I'll be doing global, national, and locally. So on to the New York Compensation Care Act, an overview of it. It's A.6357-E and S.7923. New York's Compensation Care Act, sponsored by Assembly Health Committee Chair Richard Gottfried and Senator Diane Savino, was approved by the New York Assembly and Senate on June 20th and was signed by Governor Andrew Cuomo on July 15, 2014. The new law will protect certain seriously ill patients who use marijuana pursuant to their doctor's advice from civil and criminal penalties. A number of modifications were made at the insistence of Governor Andrew Cuomo. As a result, patients will not be allowed to smoke medical cannabis. The law will sunset after 7 years, and there will be no more than 5 manufacturers with a total of up to 20 locations in the entire state. New York is a pretty big state. How is it only 20 dispensaries? Come on. Really? I think that's ridiculous. I could see maybe if it was like Rhode Island or New Jersey or Washington, D.C., some place that's small. I could see 20 dispensaries there, but that'd be like telling Texas, you guys could only have 50. Really? Or, the same 20. Texas is bigger than New York, I believe, land mass wise. So it is a step forward. I'm glad with that. I'm happy that it is a step forward, but it still needs more work. It's progression and forward. Maybe the next governor that came in might fix this and fix things. We'll have to see what happens. Will Cuomo open up more to where he doesn't get ousted when it's re-election time, or will the next governor eventually down the road make this better? So, but there's always amendments that can be put into it to where it gets fixed and makes it better for the New York citizens. Patient certifications. To qualify, a patient must have written certification from his or her physician. Physicians must first register with the health department and take a 2 to 4 hour course. A certification must specify that the patient is in the physician's continuing care for the condition, that the patient is likely to receive therapeutic or palliative benefits from marijuana, and that he or she has a qualifying condition. The doctor must consider what form of medical marijuana the patient should use and state any recommendations or limitations of the certification. The health commissioner may also allow nurse practitioners to certify patients. Qualifying conditions. So that sounds pretty decently reasonable, I say, with the patient certification for doctors. I say it sounds pretty reasonable. They have to take a course to be educated properly about it, and so forth. And I like that the nurse practitioners can can certify patients as well. I think that's a good thing. I like those two things in there. It doesn't, that aspect of it sounds like that's a good part. I like that. Qualifying conditions. To qualify, a patient must have cancer, HIV/AIDS, ALS, Parkinson's disease, multiple sclerosis, spinal cord damage causing spasticity. I'm dyslexic, so sometimes I butcher words. I try to sound them out, do my best. I'm just being honest with you. Epilepsy, inflammatory bowel disease, so IBD, neuropathies, I'll probably butcher that word, Huntington's disease. The health commissioner may also add or delete conditions and must decide whether to aid Alzheimer's, muscular dystrophy, probably butcher that word, PTSD, and then arthritis within 18 months of the law's effective date. All of those last things there that I named, even the one I didn't, the couple ones I couldn't figure out how to say, they all should be qualifying things. I'll put it down in the description. So you click on the description, you can see what it says for qualifying conditions and read that yourself, because I didn't say all the words there. So anyways, so I think it's good, the stuff that they're allowing it for, but Alzheimer's, it should be, PTSD, it should be, for arthritis, it should be allowed. I don't see why it wouldn't, because it's going to help these people. It's about helping people. Why would you not? I don't understand why the governor would not want to help more people. You know what I mean? Governor Cuomo should have, thought more. I don't know. I know he did think about the people, but at the same time, there are aspects of this that I feel that more compassion for his New York citizens should have been used to make this the proper bill. But it's all a learning process with governors. It's not going to be careful, especially because people are watching Washington State and Colorado State to check and see how they're doing things. So the registry identification cards. The health department will issue registration identification cards to patients and caregivers who submit valid applications, written certifications, and fees of up to $50. Patients will have no legal protection until they have an ID card. I guess that makes sense. Registration identification cards will generally expire after a year. It's kind of like having a driver's license, except for instead of 4 years or whatnot, or 5 years, it's only a year, unless the patient has a terminally illness or the physician specified in an earlier date. If police are present with an ID card, the department will verify the card's validity. That makes, it has its, it has its good qualities and whatnot. I mean, I understand the registration cards. That makes sense. My Patriots mug, I'm drinking coffee. It's early in the morning there. So, caregivers. Patients may designate up to 2 caregivers who may pick up their medical marijuana for them. Caregivers generally must be at least 21 years old, and they may not serve more than five patients. So that's sounds reasonable. Makes sense to be 21 years older, 21 or older, to be a caregiver. I agree with that. I don't think that's somebody that's 16 or, that's 18 that just graduated high school and so forth. They might be about, mature enough to do it, but at 21, you've had 3 years after high school where you could have been in college and so forth, or not, and be more responsible. Minor patients who are under 21. An appropriate person who is 21 or older must fill out an application for a minor patient. A minor's caregiver must be his or her parent, guardian, or, if neither is available, other appropriate person who is approved by the department. I agree with that. Makes sense. That's perfectly understandable. Possession limits. Patients may possess a 30-day supply of medical marijuana, an amount that will be determined either by the health commissioner during rulemaking or by the physician. They may refill their 30-day supply 7 days before it runs out. I agree with that. I'm just kind of like wondering what the commissioner is going to decide, as what they deem a 30-day supply is, so because for different patients, with different conditions, it could be less, it could be more. So it would be interesting to see where they go with that. Protections. Patients, caregivers, physicians, and staffers of state legal medical marijuana organizations would not be subject to arrest or prosecution or subject to any civil penalty for the actions allowed under the Act. In addition, being a medical marijuana patient would be considered a disability for purposes of the state anti-discrimination laws. The law also includes legal language to protect patients from discrimination in family law or domestic relations cases. I think that sounds about right. So limitations. Medical marijuana may not be smoked. Why? It also may not be consumed in a public place. Any form of medical marijuana not expressively approved by the health commissioner is prohibited. I guess I understand, it's not legal in the state of New York like it is Washington, Colorado, so I understand not using in public places. I don't agree with that they're not allowed to smoke it. I think that's a big limitation that they should fix that, correct that, amend it, and get that fixed as soon as possible. Out-of-state patients. The law does not include protections of out-of-state patients. Makes sense. Registered organizations. The health department will select no more than 5 registered organizations to manufacture medical marijuana. That may be for profit or non-profit and may have no more than 4 dispensary locations each. The health department will consider factories, including whether applicants are of good moral character and if they can prevent diversions and maintain security. Each registered organization must be unionized, and its staff is not permitted to strike. Interesting. You have to think about that a little bit, but I think it has its ups and its downs to it. Registered organizations, restrictions, and regulations. Registered organizations need to consult the prescription monitoring, like, they're watching a program database to ensure that they are not dispensing more than a 30-day supply to a patient. They would also be required to approve a safety insert, which would include information on potential dangers with marijuana. Like what? Tell me what the dangers are. Registered organizations could submit marijuana to labs for testing and would have to provide information about the product's potency and safety. marijuana would have to be grown in secure, enclosed indoor facilities. In most cases, registered organization staff members may not have. In most cases, registered organizations staff members may not have had felony drug convictions within the past 10 years. The department will use additional regulations, include those related to advertising, security, tracking, and surveillance. A registration may be suspended or terminated for violations of the law. Sounds about right, I'd say. I think that makes sense there. Pricing. The health commissioner would determine the price of marijuana. That will be interesting. I'll be curious to see what the commissioner decides on pricing. That should be interesting, especially for all the patients. What will they have to pay? Right now, there's a big, gigantic question mark on that. We will have to wait until the health commissioner determines and decides the price of it. I'm curious to find out what that is, and I'll be looking forward to finding that information out once it becomes available. Insurance. Health insurance will not be required to cover medical marijuana. Will not be required to cover medical marijuana. Interesting. Misconduct by doctors. The law creates a new felony for doctors who issue a certification with reasonable grounds to know a person has no medical need for it, or the person will not be using it to treat a qualifying seriously medical condition. That's interesting. How about that? A doctor could potentially go to jail if he misuses it. So it's kind of like if the commissioner or whomever is overseeing it, the overseer, decides the doctor was not in the right grounds to subscribe medical marijuana to somebody, that doctor could end up going to jail. I think that's pretty bogus. The doctor's trying to help a human out with this, and he's at risk. But it's, there's rules, so, there's certain conditions. Right now, it's a baby law. It's a baby right now, so it'll eventually get better as time goes on. Misconduct by others. The act also creates a new misdemeanor for any person who delivers medical marijuana to somebody who, with reasonable grounds to believe the person is not registered. Another misdemeanor is created for a patient or a caregiver who keeps more marijuana than they are allowed to. That's interesting. Because of the rules, the laws, and the regulations, that they have to not abuse that, so that's understandable. Excessive tax. Medical marijuana would be subject to a 7% excise tax. 22.5 of the tax revenue would go to the county where the marijuana was sold, and 22.5 to the county where the marijuana was manufactured. 5% would be directed to drug abuse prevention, counseling, and treatment, and 5% would be directed to criminal justice services. Why is 5%? Why is 5% directed to the criminal justice service? I do not understand why that would be there. That doesn't make sense. And why, is there a 5% of it being directed to drug abuse prevention, counseling, and treatment centers? I understand for like crack cocaine and heroin and meth and all those other things that we need to get people off of those things and whatnot. But I think it's kind of interesting where some of this money is going to, when it should be more than 5%. That those 5%, that 10% should be going into schools and educations and other stuff, like to help build better education system and better roads and bridges and other things, that could help, our society and the farmers and stuff in different locations, so I think it's kind of interesting with that, The effective date. The Compassionate Care Act went into effect immediately on July 5th, 2014. Registration, identification cards, or registered organizations registrations will become effective on the ladder of a 18-month after enactment of a 18 months after enactment, and B, when the superintendent of state police certifies the title can be implemented in accordance with public health and safety interest. That's interesting there. So it goes into effect, but then it doesn't. Like, it does and it doesn't. It's kind of like, suspension of the program. The governor may immediately terminate all registered organizations licensed based on a recommendation from the head of the state of police that there is a risk to public health and safety. Sunset. The act will be repealed after 7 years if it has not been renewed before then. Interesting. Yeah, there's a lot there. So leave me a comment down below. Let me know what you think. Like the video if you like the content and you liked the information. Subscribe to my channel. I hope that you do. There's a lot of interesting information there. So I'm very curious to see where this goes, and I'll be keeping an eye on it. And when there are updates, I will be sure to do what I can to get them to you guys. I hope you enjoy this edition of my YouTube channel. This edition called the New York Compensation Care Act, where New York became the 23rd state for medical marijuana. And there you have it.